I'm back. Hello, I'm Jono, and I thought I'd make another video. And basically, this video is going to be on Cubase and some personal workflow things, some systems that I've created. And big thanks to a good friend, Clelson Lopes. He's a Cubase guru. I'll give a link down there, and yeah, check him out and stuff. Like if you ever need any help, he has good rates and yeah, very knowledgeable. But anyway, there's a few things that I've created in Cubase to actually make my life easier. Firstly, there's an amazing feature in Cubase called Show Tracks with Data. Now, that is, when you press it, basically it will show any track in your project that has data on it. And that's brilliant, unless of course you have a template and a lot of tracks, and every single track has got, well, if you look on the screen right now, here are some bits of data at the start for balancing the template. So when you press tracks with data, let's see what happens. I've got a button on Metagrid here. I'm using a big touch screen with something by a company called 14-bit Midi. It's called CPU, which is a bit of a silly name, isn't it, really, CPU? But it stands for Cubendo Power Users. It's not released yet, but it's soon to be released, and it's amazing. But here I have the standard button from Cubase called Show Tracks with Data. So let's see what happens when we press that. Okay, so it's showing all these tracks with data. It showed these up here that weren't on here, Albion 1 wins. Now I don't want that. So let's go back just to show the library. This was Spitfire Symphonic Strings. Oh, I better say this now. My computer might crash in the middle of this video. It doesn't seem to like ScreenFlow. It's an old Mac Pro 5.1. It's, I don't know, maybe this is a bit too much for it to handle whilst filming and stuff like this. But none of this stuff crashes normally. I was just sort of experiencing it earlier when I was just testing to see if it actually was filming anything. So I apologise. I'll just try and stick the video together if so. Anyway, we are back to Spitfire Symphonic Strings, and I have a button that I created, and I showed this in another video to get around this, and it's called Show Tracks with Data from bar 3. So what this actually essentially does is, as you can see, this starts at bar 4. I usually start at bar 5 when I record anyway. It's just something I've always done. But when I press Show Tracks with Data from bar 3, it will boycott all these tracks with data because they are before bar 3. So let's actually have a look at that. And there we go. Only those tracks with data are showing. So that essentially gets rid of that problem. And that's all cool and stuff. But here's what I've actually created now. Something called branding tracks. And I don't know why I've called it that. I mean, I just had cattle branding on the brain. And I just thought, yeah, let's brand the tracks. And obviously animals, not humans. That would be weird. But, right, let's show this in practice. So let's get the whole library back up. Now, here's, ignore all the stuff that's flashing up and stuff. I'll talk about that in a minute. It's just a bit of latency. Let's just say I have just started writing a piece of music, and it is in no way finished, and judge me all you want for my crappy programming and stuff, but it is just literally a start. Let's just say that I'm working on it now, and I'll just to put it in context, let's I'll just play some of this, and then I'll show you what the branding tracks does. Okay. That's all you need to hear at the minute. So, right, basically we've got to this point, and I'm thinking, okay, I wouldn't mind hearing a bit of chamber strings with this now. So let's press the chamber strings button and see what happens. There is a bit of latency because there are a lot of tracks in these ones, but there's less tracks in a folder, and you have far less latency when you do this stuff. But we've got chamber strings here, but we can't see. This is the one thing that annoys me about this modular approach to a template. It's great being able to press a button and saying, oh, chamber strings is here, or Albion 1 strings is here, or CSS, or whatever libraries you're using. But I can't see what I was just working on, which is like this problem. So let's go back to symphonic strings. Now, I've created some buttons in order to do this. The first button I've created is called Brand Selected Tracks. Now, what it does is essentially it uses something in the Cubase project logical editor called prepend data. So in a sense, it's going to rename the tracks at the start. Append is after. And I'll show you how to do all this stuff at the end of the video rather than bore people all the way through this. So I've selected the tracks, and I'll press Brand Selected Tracks and see what happens here at the spellings here. SSS stands for Spitfire Symphonic Strings. Brand tracks, and you see them all shift over. Now, as you can see, there's an underscore there. Now, I chose an underscore just purely because I don't want to impair my vision when I see the actual track name, and B, when I actually look at these tracks, I know that that has been branded because it's not in line with everything else. Let me save this in case it crashes. Paranoia has come in. I've updated OS X and stuff, and it's just not to Mojave Desert or whatever it's called. Just I've been messing around, tweaking things, and I might have messed my computer up. So now that's branded, let's go back to chamber strings and see what happens. Voila! The branded tracks are now tracks with data that are visible on the fly. So now we can actually, tweak whatever we want here and add something, I don't know. Totally ruining my vibe, obviously. But if we now brand that track, notice how, oh, I missed the button, the mic's in my way. That's now branded. So you just do it as you go and stuff. And let's just say that we want to go to, I don't know, Albion 1 Brass. There's nothing in Albion 1 Brass yet. But inside here would be Albion 1 Brass. And obviously the tracks that have been branded show up as well. So it's just this way of being able to use the track data. I'll give an explanation to this. Let's go back to chamber strings, as it's not really helpful not having any brass in Albion 1 Brass. But let's go back to here. Let's just delete that utter dog's brown. And let's say I want to comp this. So using the paste to origin button, that's probably one of the best things about Cubase. Let's copy it, and let's say that I want to hear it on... let's get rid of that. Let's paste it on there, and let's copy that. Paste that. Copy. Paste. Obviously, the audio and stuff, this isn't balanced, and you should never really do this with MIDI data. Like, every library is different. You shouldn't just copy MIDI data and stuff, but this is just for an example's sake of, how speedy you can be. And then we'll put that there. All of a sudden, we can have a listen to what that sounds like using chamber strings instead, and we don't have to worry. We can get away with dragging anything we want from any part that has been branded. So instantly, the chamber strings are... the cello's so loud, but you get the idea. So maybe I actually prefer that. So let's brand those tracks. Go back to that. Brand tracks, and then say I don't want those. Then I obviously have a button that unbrand selected branded tracks. So I press that, and voila, they have gone. The branding's gone. Now, I also have a button that is called Unbrand All Branded Tracks, and that's just for when, say you get to a certain point in the project, you feel, I don't need to see any of this anymore, I'm happy not seeing that. You just press that and every single track in the project that's been branded will be unbranded. These obviously have been branded now. These tracks here with data, let's not mute these, let's just keep them active for a minute. Now, let's say that you're working on this and you forget to brand some tracks and you think, oh God, where are they and stuff. I have a button that is called Show Tracks with Data Without Brand. And it only works with tracks with data, like it won't show anything else. It's so you don't pick up any other tracks. But if I press that now, see what happens. Just a bit of latency. It's now showing those top tracks because there isn't a brand on them. And I could immediately just think, oh, right, excellent. Let's brand those then. And if I go back to showing tracks with, well, actually, I could just show tracks with data if I want, but what's the point? I've already shown you that. Let's just go back to another library now, cinematic studio strings, for example. Okay, so there are my branded tracks. Obviously, the Spitfire Symphonic Strings tracks haven't been branded, so if we go back to there and want to brand those, then we can. Yeah, there they are. And obviously, the only thing about this is that because of the order of tracks in a template, so if I press show all tracks that are folded in my template at the moment, it takes a bit of time. The order of the tracks, like, you know, if chamber strings is above symphonic strings, then that's where it will be. There's no way of me actually telling them to all reorganize and stuff like that. I mean, there's only certain stuff you can do with all this, but it's just a little workaround of always having tracks with data as and when you want. So I'll show you how to do that. Something else that I've abandoned as well are folder tracks for everything in between. It's just for this whole show tracks with data. Like, if I press that now, everything actually stacks up. I mean, obviously, that's in a different folder because it's in a different library. So you are going to have a folder there. But having everything, having like violins 1 in a folder, violins 2 in a folder, violas in a folder, cello in a folder, and contrabass strings in a folder. That's a lot of folders to actually have on your screen when you do the show tracks with data. So just having a MIDI track that's disabled and not named, that is definitely the way forward to actually, you know, separating everything. And then when you do show tracks with data, they all just go together apart from the master folders. Let me press the unbranded tracks again and I'll show you something else. Unbrand all branded tracks, so they're all back to normal now, and I'm just going to delete those because I don't want them. Now, something else that I've created, the one issue that you have with rack instruments and MIDI tracks, and it's my preferred way of working when you're using V Pro. I'm using V Pro 6. You can use an instrument track and MIDI tracks connected. You could use an instrument track per V Pro tab if you wanted to work coupled and unpreserved. That's another way of working. But MIDI tracks, unlike instrument tracks, don't have an audio output built in. You know, an instrument track is an audio track and a MIDI track all in one. And they're wonderful. However, there are pitfalls to this. I need to use V Pro, so they're kind of out. I do use instrument tracks inside the template, but for anything in V Pro, I use MIDI tracks, and the inherent problem with just using MIDI tracks is where are the audio outputs? Now, by default, Cubase actually puts the audio outputs into VST Instruments. It's called a folder called VST Instruments, and I'll press a button that I've set up so to show you this. Up at the top now, you just saw VST Instruments appear. I'll press it again to hide it, press it again to open it. And that's quite a cool button to have just in case you need to get in here. But if we open this, and a lot of this stuff has been moved out of here, but not all of it. The template is still being redesigned at the minute. But if I open this, for example, woodwinds, I've got all these outputs in here, and they need to go elsewhere. They're unnamed at the minute, totally useless. That's empty, and I'll show you why. That is basically the rack over here, SSB. Don't know why that's so small. Stupid, isn't it? Yeah, that is basically just the rack. But I don't want to put any of that stuff in. I don't want to keep going to that. That annoys me more than anything. So what I have created, I made another video called that explains something called a Midi Dump system that I created, and I'll show you what that is after I show you this, because it's in the folder. Basically, I have a folder inside here that I store the VST outputs on every single thing, and I've called it the Cubasement. It's just like, you know, open the trapdoor and all the shit goes down in the basement, and when I want to go in there, I lift the trapdoor and it opens up. So I press the button for the Cubasement and see what happens on the screen. Voila. Right, you obviously can't read all of that because this screen is a 4K screen, so normally I have all of that and it looks quite nice and small. So I'll open it so you can read it. What's just happened here, you have the Cubasement folder and it appears. Ignore the Midi Dump for a minute. You can see here is an output, SSS ensemble longs, SSS ensemble shorts. And then here are violin ones, longs, violin shorts. These are performance legatos with violins 1, 2, violas, cello and basses. And these are time machine shorts, violins 1 obviously down to basses. But I have the ensemble outputs going to those outputs. And then I have violin 1 going here. And if I scroll down, violin 2, violin 3, cello, sorry. The rest for the wicked. And then obviously contrabass down here. And I just find now, whenever I just want access to the audio outputs, I just press that button and they appear. Simple as that. And then obviously you can go to your routing and whatever you actually want to do. It's quite handy. And I've done that for all sorts of stuff. So if we go to Cinematic Strings 2, the only thing you have to suffer is the fact you see them and then they hide. And I don't care. I can now press the Cubasement and voila, they appear. And the V at the start, that stands for visible, and it's just part of how this all works. But inside, I don't know why that's there. I like having those at the top. Anyway, that's for me to change another time. But the Midi Dump is a different thing altogether. And how do I show this? Let's go back to symphonic strings where I've got some data. Okay, so the whole point of the Midi Dump system is to preserve MIDI information. It's so I can always keep my MIDI information when I've rendered things to audio. So I can always go back and go, oh, there's the performance. It becomes the idea was like, say you look here and there's these muted events with data. And say let's just pretend that these are the rendered parts. I don't want to keep that in the project window and clutter everything up, but I want to keep that data, and that's what the Midi Dump folder is. So if I press the Cubasement button, open that trapdoor up, the Midi Dump, by design, appears and it's folded. It's not open. I don't want to see the contents of the Midi Dump folder unless I absolutely have to. So they open up. This folder opens up, and that is folded. And let's just show this in practice. Let's do a small part so it doesn't take forever to render. That violin 2 part is nailed. And so now we're going to render that. Just bear with my computer. Surprise. It might take at least a day. Look how long it takes. I can't wait to upgrade these computers. Anyway. So here we are. Okay, right. By default, that's muted it, because that's how I like that. Let's just quickly name this. And now what I want to do, right, I want to keep the audio, but I want to get rid of the MIDI data. So I've created a button called Purge, And what this button was originally planned to do was everything in one go, but it only does most of it. And I'll explain exactly what I'm trying to say now. I basically want to duplicate that, and I want to make the duplicate disabled, and then I want to put the duplicate inside the Midi dump. And that way the duplicate is rooted and it's named and it contains the data and it's in the Midi dump folder, out of sight, out of mind. And then I want to delete the original data off of the original track so I can carry on using, you know, whatever patch and stuff. I've got a button that does most of that, and it's called Purge Dump, and I press that now. And if you watch what happened, it just duplicated that track, it disabled that track, and it has a little D after it, and that tells me it's disabled. And then on the original track, it just deleted the contents. This is why I was just saying that I wanted it so it actually puts the duplicate into the Midi dump as well, but it just doesn't actually do that. There's no way of Cubase, you can't tell Cubase to send tracks or folders into folders specifically, so it's a bit of a drag. Poor Western drag that is. But now all I do is I click the disabled track, put it in Midi dump, and then when I'm done doing that, obviously my track is now clear. There's no information on that at all, and I'll just get rid of the actual Cubasement, and it's all just hidden away. And there's something else that I've created with the show tracks from bar 3. Basically, normally it would show all tracks with data from bar 3, and that includes all the stuff that's in the Midi dump, and I don't want that. So I've created a button, I've amended the show tracks with data to actually exclude anything in the Cubasement folder. So let me... Did I make a button for that? Do you know, I don't think I put it on the touchscreen. That's handy, isn't it? Well, basically I have a button that does that. You press it and it won't show anything with the Midi dump folders and stuff. So that's a system to actually always keep your Midi information safe, be able to work cleanly, and also to be able to brand tracks so you can actually show tracks with data, and also be able to actually see the VST audio outputs whenever you want at the touch of a button. And I'll just show you the macro chain of how that works. Again, bear in mind there's quite a few commands, so this might take a few minutes. Right. So the macro commands for this, I'll just show one. Okay, it's a bit of a beast. I'm also making this video, by the way, so when I forget all this stuff, I can watch it back and teach myself again. I know. First PLE command is hide all. Then I've got a command called show the important tracks, which are, when that fires off, it shows all the important tracks which I haven't actually shown you. The important tracks, it's just the name I've given it. All these up here, tempo, time signature, click, video tracks like that, arranger tracks, all that kind of stuff. Because whenever you go to a new library, it deletes all those, like it hides them or not delete them. So I always want them showing. So basically, let's go back to this macro again. So the first thing that happens is everything hides, self-explanatory. Then the show the important tracks, it instantly shows those tracks. Then a command is called rename all to the Cubasement, and it's easier to show that working, to be honest. It's a bit technical. The next thing that's basically going to happen is that the library that I've pressed, Spitfire Symphonic Strings, is going to show. Now, I want to unfold all visible folder tracks inside there, and inside the Cubasement folder, I want then the Midi dump folder to actually fold as well. I don't know if I'm explaining this well, but it's all quite technical. But I don't want the Midi dump folder to actually open. Otherwise, without that command, everything inside the Cubasement folder will actually open. I need to actually have rename the Cubasement folder so it actually hides. If it doesn't rename it, it puts a V, it takes a V off of the name, and then when you actually press the button, the Cubasement button, it adds a V to show it's visible. That's how that kind of works. And this is the most important thing. If you weren't going to use the Cubasement stuff, just ignore all of that. But show tracks with the underscore. That's at the very end. So whenever you press a library, that's how it makes the branding tracks possible. So when you brand the tracks, you brand the tracks with an underscore. And then, obviously, because that's in each macro, when you press it, it will look for a track with a hyphen in it at the start. And then it will obviously show those tracks as well. And that's how it's kind of designed. Like, Clelson and I went through this quite a lot. It's the only way we can figure out how to do this. So if anyone's got any ideas of how to make this better, then that'd be amazing. But I guess I could show you how to show you all the commands. I mean, hide all is hide all. That's just a Cubase command. Show the important tracks. Let's show that. Okay. Show the important tracks. That's what this looks like. And obviously Cubase, why are things not resizable in Cubase? It drives me mad. Like, I can't make this any bigger. But this will show all the important tracks. So here the media type is the marker, chord, arrange. You can pause this and stuff. Otherwise I'll bore the hell out of everyone. But they're the actual track types. Also a video track, then the audio track, and then this denotes what name. You have to give the audio tracks names, otherwise it won't find them. And then MIDI track, and then any names of the MIDI tracks. And MIDI track is also instrument track in this case. You want track operation, hide track, and then disable. That means it won't hide them. And then make sure transform function is on. So let's go back. Let's do the next command. So much latency with that. I've got so many commands from different things, Metagrid, 14-bit MIDI, other things, my own stuff. It just takes a little while. So I usually take them out when I'm actually working on stuff, so it's instant. Anyway, the next command, rename all to the Cubasement. So let's have a look at that. No. Rename all to the Cubasement. Now, container type equal folder track and name contains. And the name, it looks weird, but the reason why I put all those full stops at the start is because when I open it, when I just want to I want it to be away from the track names, so I can instantly see Cubasement. You could call it whatever you want. Like, it's just this is just all the idea stuff that I've been messing around with. Then obviously name, and then replace it with exactly the same thing, so it basically hides it. If I press the Cubasement button, you'll see what I mean by the dots. There, you see all these dots? It means that I can instantly read the Cubasement. It's just there, away from all the writing. It's kind of handy. Maybe a bit excessive, I don't know. Okay, so next command. I should have written this down, really. In fact, let's screenshot it. Macros. That is now screenshotted. Okay, so obviously now we've got to pick the library that we actually want to show. Spitfire Symphonic Strings in this case. And that will be in here, Spitfire Symphonic Strings. And that is just self-explanatory. Container type is equal to a folder track. It's looking for a folder track, and the name has to be equal to what the name is. So SA Symphonic Strings. And that is exactly what it's called there. The naming is very important to have any of this work. Track operation, hide track, disable. So it's going to show everything inside that one folder. Okay. So now we're going to unfold all visible folder tracks. Okay. Container type is equal, folder track, and property is not set and it's hidden. Track operation is folder and open. That's going to open everything inside inside the folders that are visible. That's important to say that. Sorry, I was just thinking about saying. Then what I want inside there is, obviously I don't want the Midi Dump folder to be unfolded, so I want that to fold. And I have various commands to explain that. Fold all inside the Cubasement. Fold all inside the Cubasement. Now, container type is equal to the folder track, and the property is not set and is hidden. And then this is where we name the folder tracks. So the first one is called Midi Dump because it's the only folder I've got in there. But I have these ones here, new name here. So if I decided, I could put one called VST Audio Output in there, but the track count gets so much, and then there are more folders to open up, and I just kind of I just want to press that button, see the audio output, and have the Midi Dump there. I can't really, I don't know, the options there for future expansion and stuff, but the track operation, folder, and then close, and obviously transform. And then rename the Cubasement. The Cubasement's just a weird name. You could call it whatever you want, you know, it's just I was having a bit of fun. Rename the Cubasement. And this is what makes it possible to actually show and hide the Cubasement. It renames it and unnames it, and it's really important. Container type is equal to folder track, and name equal to the name. Again, it's a bit of that's a bit of a nuisance, to be fair. And property is not set, is hidden. And then we got name prepend, which is the branding thing, a V at the start, track operation, folder, close, and then track operation, hide track, enable. So it closes the folder and then it hides the folder. And it stays hidden because there's a V on it. And then last but not least, we've got show tracks with underscore. Show tracks with, and it's simple. Container type is equal to track, so it is looking for a track, and the name contains an underscore. So something to bear in mind when you do this kind of thing: if you use underscores in your naming for other things, then don't use an underscore. You basically use a symbol that is never going to be used for anything else. And I don't use underscores for naming. I use some hyphens, and you know, it depends. Track operation, hide track, disable. So that shows the tracks. So it's always going to show tracks with that. And that's why it's important to have that in the macro at the very end. I don't really think there's anything else I'm going to cover today. I bought a new mic. It's quite good. I don't know. It's a Rode Podcaster. But it's this boom arm I'm really impressed with. It just literally holds. Anyway, it's perfect for that. In a world. Hope this has been of some use to anyone, and yeah, let me know what your thoughts are, and if you've got any way to make any of this better, then get in touch, and yeah, share some ideas and stuff. That'd be amazing.